All right, today we're going to do notes on 2-2, angles and congruence. The notes itself, the terms are very important and not altogether that complicated. Um, One of the problems or one of the type of problems you're going to have can be a little bit tricky, and so we'll spend some time focusing on that as well. And so just to review before we dive in, and hopefully you've watched the 2-1 video and you understand this, but we have to know a lot of stuff about angles. Angles are a big part of geometry. And so start with, that's the angle sign. If I'm angling the angle down here, I use 3 letters most commonly. Right? I would use D, A, and B, or D, A, and C. Right? A, because it is the vertex, it's where they join together, has to be the middle letter. Right? And so it doesn't matter if you what the other first and third letters are, as they do out here. Angle A, it's don't get too used to naming angles with one letter. I've went over in class, but if there's 2 angles at the same vertex, you cannot use one letter. And so until you get used to when to use one letter or when that's acceptable, it's best not to use that too often. All right. Then these are all review from really previous years of your learning. Acute angles are less than 90. Right angles are exactly 90. All right. And so when it's acute, it's less than 90. When it's a right angle, we'll put this little box in here to let you know that it's a right angle. Obtuse angles are greater than 90, and straight angles are like straight lines. And in our geometry class, we will not deal with any angles that are greater than 180. And so really what you need to have, if it was me writing the notes right now, I would write down complementary angles equal 90 degrees. And so really what the slide is saying is it doesn't matter if they are not adjacent or not touching, or if they are adjacent or share a side. As long as the 2 angles would add up to 90, 30 plus 60 makes 90, 67 plus 23 makes 90, then I can call them complementary. Supplementary angles, if it was me writing down notes, then right now I'd write down supplementary and I'd abbreviate angles equal 180 degrees. And then the same basic concept here in the rest of the slide. You have non-adjacent angles, or angles that do not share a side here, that up to 180. 110 plus 70 makes 180. And here two angles that are adjacent or share a side, 135 and 45, add up to 180. Also note here that these 2 angles form a straight line. We have talked about linear pairs in 2-1. And so this, probably the better definition of linear pair is that they are 2 angles that are supplementary. But now we know they're supplementary means 180, and we talked about that with linear pair. For both of them, the important math is knowing that it equals 180. Also, quick side note, if I write down complementary and supplementary, I guess angles here, and I'm at a test that I have that moment where I freeze. Oh gosh, how do I remember which is which? All right. A former student taught me this. If I had one line to each, if I had a line here and a line here, it makes this one up top here look like a 9 for 90, and this one here look like an 8 for 180. And so that's a useful trick, and it's something I've even used if I go brain dead and try to remember which is which. Complementary is 90, supplementary is 180. And so our problems are going to be like this. And first, let's read it, and then let's break it down to pieces here. And so find the measure of 2 complementary angles if the measure of the larger angle is 5 more than 4 times the measure of the smaller angle. So let's break that down. Find the measure of 2 complementary, that's a math word here that we know, angles. And so we should know, hopefully, from this lesson that complementary means that they equal 90. Now, as 2 angles we're combining, and so hopefully you have realized that means that they're going to add to make 90. Now let's keep reading. If the measure of the larger angle is 5 more than 4 times the measure of the smaller angle. Well, that's a tough lot of words there. The larger angle is 5 more. Well, I know that what that means in math. And then 4 times, well, I know what that means in math, the measure of the smaller angle. Well, do we know what the smaller angle is? I don't think so. It doesn't say anywhere, so I'm just going to call the smaller angle a variable. So for me, that's going to be x. And then my large angle, I know is 5 more than 4 times the measure. Well, 4 times is easy. 4 times x is just 4x. 5 more is plus 5. Now, could you have written that as 5 plus 4x? Absolutely, would have been just as good. Now I have to set up math. The two angles combine, or we add together. So x is the first angle, 4x plus 5 is the second angle. They add together, they're complementary, which means they make 90 degrees. Always combine like terms on each side of the equal sign first. 4x plus 1x is 5x. Then subtract 5. Subtract 5 from both sides. And so you get 5x equals 85. Then divide 5 off both sides. And you get x equals 17. Well, the small angle is just x. So the small angle is just 17. The large angle is, now, 2 choices here. You could plug x into this equation, or you know they combine to make 90, and so you can just do 90 minus 17, all right? And that is 73. And so now I have my large angle and my small angle. And if I wanted to double check to make sure I was right, I could do both. 90 minus 17 is 73. I could plug it back in up here. 4 times 17 is 68, plus 5 is 73. I know I did it correctly. All right, pause the video here and try out the U-try problem, please. It starts with 2 angles are complementary. If you need more time, again, hit pause, but I'm going to go through it. I'm going to go through it kind of quick because I hope that you can go back and replay the other one. All right. We know this means equals 90. It says the larger is 10 greater than 9 times the measure of the smaller angle. And so, again, the small angle, I don't know. The large angle is 9 times x plus 10 or greater. 10 greater is plus 10. Again, if you had 10 plus 9x, that would be just as good. Now I need to add those up. Set it equal to 90 because it said complementary. That combine like terms step. The subtract 10 step. The divide by 10 step. And that means this one over here is 8 degrees. And then I would do 90 minus 8 equals 82 for the large, or I could plug 8 in. 9 times 8 is 72, plus 10 is 82, so I know I got it correct. Real quick, I guess, before I go on, you'd have the same kind of problem if it said supplementary. Is just you would end it with equals 180 instead of equals 90. And that's important to know because you're going to have that on your assignment. Perpendicular. The first thing I want to point out here is in our classroom, we're going to use this symbol for perpendicular. All right, perpendicular is that symbol. And so I have to be able to read the geometry. And then you just need to know that perpendicular means it breaks it into right angles or 90 degree. That was supposed to be a little parenthesis. 90 degree angles. All right. And so I have to be able to read this. So down here it says line AC is perpendicular to line DB. Line AC is perpendicular to line DB. And so I know that means that they meet at a right or 90-degree angle. Now, from the last section, you know if this is 90, vertical angles. These two should add up to 180, linear pair. This is 90, 90 plus 90 makes 180. And so really, if one angle is 90 here, all four are 90. And so it's good to know things are perpendicular. And so this tangram here has problems and equations with x's and y's in it. It wants you to find the values of x and y such that line AD and line EC are perpendicular. So I want this inside here. I want this to be 90 degrees. And it's kind of hard to see, but the first thing inside that red box is 7x plus 10. Inside the other box, the green one there, is 8x plus 5. If I was doing things mathematically correct, I would be inserting those inside of parentheses. And so let me go in and add that. I need to start doing that for you. All right, just a good thing anytime I'm plugging in. Equals 90 degrees. All right. I combine like terms. I get 15x plus 15. 7x plus 8x is 15x. 10 plus 5 is 15 equals 90. That gives me 15x equals 75. After I minus 15 from both sides, I divide, and I get x equals 5. I need to do the same kind of thing now for down here with the y. 3y plus 15 equals 90. I minus the 15. I get 3y equals 75. I divide by 3. I get y equals 25. Just using the rule that I know those, the right angle or perpendicular means 90, and then solving. And the last kind of problem we're going to have is state whether this can be true, can be assumed from the figure. And so let's kind of break down some of these. Can be assumed means you know it's true. And so let's look at the first one. Angle ABD and angle DBE are supplementary. Can I know that for sure from this picture? Angle ABD and angle DBE are supplementary. Well, what does supplementary mean? All right. And so if they equal 180, then we're good. Well, where is angle ABD? ABD is right there. And then next to it is DBE. And so those two things combine here to make a straight line. We said a straight line is 180 degrees. And so, yes, this can be assumed. Let's look at B. All right. B says angle ADE, all right, is bisected by that. And so does BD split it into two equal parts? Well, it certainly looks like it. Absolutely, it looks like it. But how would I know for sure they're equal parts? To know for sure, I would need to see the little curvy things, or arc marks they're called, or congruent marks. You need to see those curvy things to know that they're congruent. I don't have that. I just drew that into the picture. That's not supposed to be there. All right. And so I cannot assume that it bisects. It looks like it does, but I cannot make that assumption. Looks can be deceiving. The other ones here are these angles CDA, CDA, and ADE. Complementary. Well, it says this is a right angle. That's what that box says. Complementary means equals 90. So then yes. And then EDB, this little angle, and BDA, this little angle, are adjacent for sure and are not complementary. Well, they for sure are adjacent, and they also don't make 90, so that means they're not complementary. And so all of these we could say yes, because on the test you're going to have to be able to say yes, I can assume, or no, I cannot assume. So these would all be yes, I can assume. This is the only one that is a cannot assume. Give it a try, page 81.